Hey guys, welcome back to the show here on the Mighty 990, 107.9 FM, AM 990. So excited to talk to my next guest, Brilyn Hollyhand, conservative commentator, RNC Youth Advisory Council co-chair. The reason we need to talk to people like Brilyn is because he is the future. And when we have this conversation about all of these old people running for re-election, and listen, I'm not ageist. I have good friends that are in their 60s, 70s. My grandparents are in their 80s, but I don't know that I want them running the country. We need young people like this stepping up and taking our country forward. Brilyn, thank you for joining me in Memphis this morning. How are you?
Good morning, Ben. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for having me. I'm great to be talking to Memphis, Tennessee. It's a great place.
It is. It's a great place, but we have our problems and problems that are facing a lot of the country right now. But I did want to talk about this upcoming election. So 2024 will be here before you know it. And your thing, sitting on the RNC Youth Advisory Council co-chair, is really to make sure our young people are getting out there and voting. This is national registration or registering to vote. I don't know. It's here, month. And when you look at how the left is playing, Brilyn, my fear is that they are playing chess, while sometimes conservatives have played checkers, especially with the youth vote. I'll get your reaction to this. Taylor Swift snagging 35,000 new registered voters, and that's on social media. So how do we play hardball with these people?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Taylor Swift, but what she did was genius. She put a social media post out. She's one of the most followed people on social media. She put a social media post out encouraging people to go to vote.org. The founder of vote.org said they were averaging over 13 users every 30 minutes. So obviously what she was doing was successful. She got young people to kind of, even if they're not politically interested, even if they're not politically active at all, she got them to go register to vote. That's what Republicans need to be doing. Now, from the RNC Youth Council side, we have filmed videos with every presidential candidate that's running. We just filmed one with Donald Trump a few weeks ago where he encourages people to go to our Bank Your Vote website. You can go to vote.gop.com right now to register. Obviously, voter registration day was this week, and we were really doing a lot of pushing and campaign and marketing ads across the country to encourage our generation to wake up and go vote. This is such an important election, and we really want to make sure that everybody has that messaging out there. But this is definitely an area, like you said, Republicans have lacked in the past. Like you said, the Democrats have been playing chess for years when it comes to ballot harvesting and ballot collecting, and Republicans have really been playing checkers. So that's something that we need to improve on, absolutely, and we need to make sure that we're collecting as many ballots and registering as many people to vote as possible.
I was on Twitter when I saw your content for the first time, and I thought, my God, this is good. This is a young person that's taking content that people do in mediums like news talk radio and putting it on America's algorithms, which is where all the kids are at. And I'll ask you, Brilyn, when I get on TikTok or Instagram, every other reel is Republicans hate children. Actually, they want to kill your children because they're not in favor of gun reform. They hate immigrants because they want to stop what's coming up through our southern border, this insane madness happening there. But we need people to counter that voice, and you have been doing that. What has your response been taking this to a more hostile to conservative medium?
Sure, absolutely. This week I did a little bit of a speaking tour and went and spoke on the campus of the University of Alabama. I spoke to some students there, and you never really know when you're speaking to college kids on, a Wednesday night if they're going to show up or not. It could be 2 or 3 people in the room. You have no idea. And it was actually a packed room. I spoke to their Turning Point USA chapter here on the campus of the University of Alabama, and we had a packed room. I think there were 2 seats open in the entire place. It was really, really cool seeing the young people are interested and involved. But not every place that I go to speak to young people is as welcoming or as conservative as a campus here in Alabama. I have this show called Brilyn on the Street Interviews where I've traveled the country interviewing people on college campuses and at big events. And I was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin a few weeks ago, and I think they had 30 homicides in the 2 or 3 days that I was there. So obviously liberal policies aren't faring too well for them in Milwaukee. But look, I'll say this. When I talk to young people, we talk about issues that matter to them. And, I've spent the past 2 back-to-back weeks traveling the country on the campaign trail, 1 week in Des Moines, Iowa, for the Iowa State Fair, another weekend, like I said, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for the first Republican primary debate. And in both states, I went on the streets, I hit the streets, I interviewed Gen Z voters about what issues matter to them most. I say, I probably interviewed 10 to 15 young people in both places. Every single young person that I interviewed said the economy was the most important issue to them going into 2024. It's not just something that's affecting our parents' generation and our grandparents' generation. It's affecting us as well, and it's something that my generation is going to remember when they go in the ballot box next year.
That's fascinating. So the economy, I mean, I was reading a story in the New York Post, and the headline there is Gen Z can't afford rent. Well, that's not good because we have to live somewhere. So hopefully it will be people putting two and two together, logic, something we seem to be missing in this country, that policies matter. Inflation, believe it or not, is a tax, Brilyn, and it's showing up in your rent costs. When you interview these candidates, how has that been? I saw an interview you did with RFK. All of these candidates, you're sitting down with them. Any interesting takeaways from this race that we're right in this middle of?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think right now Trump's obviously the clear front runner. He's up by a mile. But I've also taken the time to sit down with other candidates on the Republican and Democrat side. At the Iowa State Fair, I interviewed that morning Vivek Ramaswamy, a Republican candidate for president. That afternoon, I even interviewed Robert Kennedy Jr. And it was really impressed that both of them would take the time out of their incredibly busy schedules to sit and talk to a young person, me, a Gen Z first-time voter. I'll be voting for the first time next year. So both of them have really done a good job of getting their message out on social media. That's where you hear the most from Vivek Ramaswamy and Robert Kennedy Jr. because they're capitalizing, knowing that my generation staring at social media, staring at our phones all day, to post videos on there, to post short form content to get their message out effectively. So I think, those are just two specific people that, come to mind immediately that have done a really good job. But if we could have more candidates going forward, put out short form content to grab the attention of my generation, I think it could be very effective and could be paying off to, have my generation vote for a candidate like these.
I'm looking at some data that came out, a recent poll. More than 1,500 potential voters between 18 and 34 years old, that would include us, a lot of young people, found that 50% of young Americans say they were very or extremely motivated to vote, compared to 50% who say that they were only somewhat or less motivated to vote. So basically, the poll shows half of young Americans, they don't like who they're voting for on the ballot this year. So do you think it's going to be, say let's conclude, and this is a jump, but say Trump top of the ticket, Biden top of the ticket. But young people, they're like, we did this once. This is a repeat of 2020. Do you think it could be issues that will be on the ballot? You've seen how Democrats have used abortion in their messaging and got people out, especially back in the midterms. Do you think this could potentially be a election less about who's sitting on the top of the ticket and more about the issues on the ticket?
Oh, absolutely. My generation, Gen Z and millennials, we're going to be the largest voting group in 2024. We cannot be overlooked if the Republican Party wants to have a shot at success next November. But this is another interesting statistic. 3 out of 4 people in our generation are not affiliated with the political party. So those are undecided voters who are seeing the disastrous economy that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have led. Those are undecided voters who know that it was cheaper to go fill up their tanks with gas, go out and eat with their friends, go on a road trip back when Donald Trump was office. So I think those voters are going to remember that when they go in the ballot box. I think they're going to remember the policies, like you said, the issues, as opposed to just the candidates. Look, this election is so incredibly important. This election is going to decide the future that my generation grows up in. It's going to decide the future that my generation grows a family in. So this is so incredibly important. It's so important that every person in our generation gets out to vote and doesn't sit at home for this election. That's kind of the message I've been trying to get out this week with the speaking tour. We need everybody to, show up on November 5th, 2024, or send in their ballot early if they're, out of state and at college, and make sure that they were ready to have their voice heard next November.
Brilyn Hollyhand, conservative commentator, RNC Youth Advisory Council co-chair, on the phone lines this morning. This story is kind of moving through with all of the news talking about federal spending and the border, but I did want to get your reaction to earlier this week, John Fetterman. And maybe he's more in step with the American people, because a vast majority in some polling say they wear casual clothes to work most days. So they're doing the casual streetwear look. Is it a good look for John Fetterman? We'll do a little rapid fire.
No, I don't think it is. Look, I have had the honor to go on the floor of the House of Representatives with a friend of mine, former Congressman Bradley Byrne, and I was required to wear a suit and tie. And I did not complain, because that is the floor of the United States House of Representatives. Look, if I do a 5:30 a.m. hit on Fox News or a national network, I'm going to be business on top and casual on bottom. There's no reason for me to be fully dressed up. But if I go in the United States Capitol, I'm expect to be in a full suit with a tie, and I think that's what I expected of my senators. They're there to represent us and not make a fool of us. And I think, John Fetterman is making a fool out of the people of Pennsylvania. It's embarrassing.
Yeah. It's like, I get wearing a hoodie. I'm wearing a hoodie like right now. Actually, I'm wearing a button up, but I do wear a hoodie to work because I'm on radio.
Sure.
I'm also not representing the constituents of Pennsylvania. And also, Brilyn, if I am going to wear a hoodie like John Fetterman, I'm going to pair it with a good pair of joggers or something. But the guy, if you look at the shorts and it pairing
basketball shorts, and it's baggy and
it's really deplorable. And my parents who live in Pittsburgh feel unrepresented by that classless act. Before I let you go, plug the show, the Brilyn Hollyhand show, excuse me. Where can people find it, and give a quick summary, kind of what you do?
Sure, absolutely. Anybody listening today can follow me on social media. You can hop on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok and follow me at Brilyn Hollyhand, or anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast app or watch your favorite podcast. You can look up the Brilyn Hollyhand Show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio. Anywhere you listen to us, you can go check it out. My interviews, like I just plugged here, David Ramaswamy, Robert Kennedy Jr. were just the most recent. We've got over 50 interviews with our nation's top political figures. So I'm very honored to be here this morning, and it was great to talk to Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you for having me.
All right, Brilyn, take it easy. Keep fighting the good fight, all right?
Thank you. I appreciate it. You too. Have a great weekend.
All right, we'll get the podcast up after this show.